This is Home Value Stories. I'm Jamie Owen. This is a podcast that is designed to educate you, the consumer, on things related to real estate and real estate valuation. Today's real estate market is hot. Prices in many areas across the country are soaring, and yet some homes are not appraising at their contract price. How can that be? After all, market value is whatever price someone in the market is willing to pay for it, right? Well, there's plenty of YouTube videos of real estate agents, loan officers, house flippers, and others who are peddling that idea. As a real estate appraiser, I'm here to tell you that just because someone is willing to buy a home for a particular price does not mean that the price is market value. What? Jamie Owen, you appraiser monster? What do you appraisers know about market value anyway? Well, in this podcast, I'd like to explain to you why contract price does not constitute market value. So I hope you'll stay tuned and find this one educational. Many people today do feel like market value is whatever someone is willing to pay for a property. And I understand that. In a way, it makes sense if you're looking at value from a very simplistic way. But value is not simple. It may appear simple, but there's a lot to it. I've observed over the decades that people who buy into that definition of value are usually listing agents or homeowners. Educated buyers usually don't buy into the concept of market value being whatever somebody's willing to buy the home for. Warren Buffett once said, "Price is what you pay, value is what you get." And Warren Buffett didn't become rich by thinking that market price is market value. In every appraisal report, appraisers have to provide a definition of the value that we're using to develop our value and its source. So if an appraiser is performing an appraisal for a bank, they're going to use typically what's called a 1004 form. It's the basic, the standard residential form that we use for our appraisals. And there's a definition of market value that we use on page 4 of that main form. Here's what the definition states. The most probable price which a property should bring in a competitive and open market under all conditions requisite to a fair sale, and buyer and seller each acting prudently, knowledgeably, and assuming the price is not affected by undue stimulus. Implicit in this definition is the consummation of a sale as of a specified date, and the passing of title from seller to buyer under conditions whereby, 1, the buyer and seller are typically motivated. 2, both parties are well-informed or well-advised, and each acting in what he or she considers his or her own best interest. 3, a reasonable time is allowed for exposure in the open market. 4, payment is made in terms of cash in U.S. dollars or in terms of financial agreements comparable thereto. And 5, the price represents the normal consideration for the property sold, unaffected by special or creative financing or sales concessions granted by anyone associated with the sale. So that's the definition of market value that we use when appraising a property for a bank. Now, I'm going to share with you an experience that happened to me recently on a purchase where I came in considerably under the contract price. And we'll talk about why I did and how this relates to market value. I recently appraised a home that was listed for around $310,000. It was listed for just under a week, and the price was bid up to somewhere in the mid-340s. Now, this was a 7-year-old home that was located in a development. It was a nice home, cute home, no repairs needed. It had an unfinished basement and a 2-car garage. Now, you might be thinking, wow, it had multiple bids and it was bid up to $340-some thousand, so that's got to be the market value of that property, right? Well, my opinion of market value was in the low 290s. Now, that's a significant difference. And you might be wondering, how in the world could the market value be that much less than the purchase price? Well, there's a couple of things that you need to know about this property. First of all, it had sold just a few years back for somewhere in the mid-250s. So my appraising it now in the mid-290s was reflective of the appreciation that had taken place rapidly over the last couple of years. And I had very similar sales that were selling in that neighborhood in the 280s and 290s. I couldn't find a single sale that supported anywhere near even the original list price. Now, of course, the listing agent thinks I'm an idiot. They said, I don't know that market. And, we get that as appraisers when somebody's upset. But when asked to provide sales that support their list price, let alone the contract price, which is way above list price, they were not able to produce a single sale. Now, here's what's more interesting about this situation and why I'm sharing this with you. A buyer could build a brand new home, and by the way, there was a lot of new construction taking place in that neighborhood. The buyer could have built a new home with a finished basement and a 3-car garage, so something superior to the property I was appraising, for tens of thousands of dollars less than the purchase price of this home that was 7 years old. So put yourself in the buyer's shoes. Why would a buyer spend tens of thousands of dollars more on a 7-year-old home when they could build a brand new one for less? It doesn't make sense. And here's a classic example of why price, the contract price, is nothing more than that. It's a price that two people agree upon, but it's not reflective of market value. Now let's go back to that definition of market value. Part of that component of the definition says that each member of the party is acting prudently. Now, what does that mean, that somebody is acting prudently? Well, if you look it up, one definition is to act in a way that shows care and thought for the future. If somebody was willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars more for a 7-year-old home than a home that could be built new, is that really acting prudently? Is that really acting knowledgeably? I think most people would say no. Therefore, that price does not reflect market value. Another aspect of that definition of market value is that both parties are well informed or well advised, and each acting in what he or she considers his or her own best interest. Well, let me tell you, if I had a real estate agent that I had hired to help me to find a home, and they were encouraging me to buy a home that was 7 years old and spend tens of thousands more than I could build the same home for brand new, that is not being well informed or well advised. If they were my agent and they tried to get me to buy that home, I'd have a real problem with that. So again, in this definition, the buyers were not well informed or well advised. Now, I'm not trying to pick on the buyers or the sellers in this case. And right now, because the market's hot, it's difficult. It's difficult to be a buyer, especially right now. I feel bad for people looking to buy a home because, first of all, there's not much out there, which is part of the reason prices are soaring. These homes are getting bid up. But second of all, it's hard to know what market value really is. But that's why it's important to hire somebody who really understands value versus price. But I wanted to share this experience with you to demonstrate why it is that sometimes the appraised value is less and sometimes significantly less than the purchase price. And while this doesn't happen on every purchase, a lot of homes are appraising at or above the contract price. But I'm seeing more and more of this happen, and it's because of the market that we're in. And speaking of the market that we're in, did you notice another aspect of that definition of market value is that the price is not affected by undue stimulus? Well, there's a lot of undue stimulus in the market right now. I don't think that you can argue with me when I say that the pandemic is an undue stimulus, or it has created an undue stimulus out there. There's a couple of reasons why I can say that. First of all, people are afraid to sell their homes. Not everyone, but many people are afraid to sell their homes. They're afraid of people coming into their home, walking around, and I totally understand that. So they've waited to put their homes on the market. That has created a shortage of inventory. And by the way, in Northeast Ohio, we've had a shortage of inventory for a couple of years now. And so that just exasperated it. And that's the case across the country in many neighborhoods. So you have a shortage of inventory, and then the government lowered mortgage interest rates to keep things going in the economy, and it has. But that has also been, in a sense, an undue stimulus. So you've got historically low interest rates, historically low inventory rates, and a high level of demand out there. And we have the market that we're in right now. But this market is being affected by undue stimulus. And so it's a little bit tricky trying to appraise a property today and taking that into consideration. And in this market, I've had homes where my opinion of market value is higher than the sales prices of all of the sales that I'm using. Because in some areas, prices are appreciating so rapidly, and when I apply market adjustments, it actually adjusts to higher than what the other sales are selling for because of time. But when that happens, I have support for that. I have support for that from that neighborhood. The problem is a lot of these homes are being bid up way above and beyond what there's support for. And so they're not going to appraise if that's the case. So in the example that I provided, there was no support for the purchase price. And that's why it didn't appraise. There's a principle at the very core of the definition of market value that appraisers have to consider. That's the principle of substitution. Now, what is the principle of substitution? Well, it's basically this. If there are multiple properties that are comparable in terms of desirability and utility, and I might add highest and best use, the property with the lowest price will likely have the greatest demand. Additionally, the maximum value of a property, its highest price, tends to be set by the cost of acquiring a different but comparable home, assuming there are no major differences between the two homes. So let me give you an example, a very simple example of how the principle of substitution works. Say you're going to the grocery store and you're walking through the produce section and you find 2 baskets of oranges. Now, the baskets are the same, but one has one group of oranges and the other has another group of oranges. The group of oranges in one basket they're $1 per orange. The group of oranges in the other basket are $1.50. Which one are you going to buy? Well, you might be thinking, there's got to be something special about those oranges that are $1.50. And I'm a big-time spender, so I'm going to go with the big-time oranges for $1.50 because that's just the kind of person I am. I like quality. But another buyer comes along, and they're savvy, and they look at the two baskets of fruit, and they think, I wonder if there's even a difference between the oranges that are selling for $1 and those that are selling for $1.50. So they call a horticulturalist in to give them an analysis of both of the oranges. Really what they're looking for is some naval intelligence, if you're picking up what I'm putting down. So the horticulturist says that after an analysis of both baskets of oranges, they are basically the same orange. It's just that in one basket they're selling for $1, and in the other basket they're selling for $1.50. Which orange are most people going to buy if they have that knowledge? I think most people are going to tend to buy the oranges that are selling for $1 because they're selling for less. Most people are going to buy the one that is less expensive. Now let's apply that principle to the definition of market value and the first 4 words in that definition. Do you remember what they are? They are the most probable price. That word probable is huge because it doesn't mean whatever the highest price is. It means what's most probable. Now, thinking about that principle of substitution, what's more probable? That people are going to buy the oranges that are less expensive or the oranges that are more expensive when all other things are equal? See, that's how the principle of substitution works. And that is the kind of value that we're deriving, the most probable price. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. As I said before in this podcast, people that buy into the idea that the price of something constitutes its market value, they don't understand market value. And it's typically sellers that are trying to get you to buy into that. But clearly, that's not the case. Now, it is true that many times the price that somebody agrees to buy for a home is in the general ballpark of market value. But just because somebody agrees to buy a home for a particular price, that doesn't necessarily constitute market value. I wanted to talk about this topic today because it's becoming a big problem, and I see this year as being even worse than last year because there's just such a shortage of inventory out there right now. And as long as that continues, we're going to have these price wars where homes are getting bid up way above market value. If you're looking to buy a home, I highly recommend that you have an appraisal done. Even if you qualify for an appraisal waiver, you can call an appraiser in your area and ask them to perform an appraisal of the property that you're buying. And I would highly recommend that you listen to what the experts are telling you. Because right now, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. You know, people can put their home on the market and it gets bid up and there's a lot of demand for it, and that's great. But what happens if the market changes? What happens if interest rates keep going up? Because right now they're inching up again. See, that can have an impact on the value of homes because it impacts what people can spend on a home. These historically low interest rates aren't going to last forever. This shortage of inventory is not going to last forever. And while it's true that the market's hot right now, you still have to make sure that the value is there. And it's true that values change constantly. Values are going up. Sometimes sometimes they remain stagnant, but usually they're going up or down. But when a person grossly overpays for a home, they're setting themselves up for a big problem if the market takes a turn for the worse. And I would like to point out another thing. Appraisers are not here to kill deals. We have no interest in a deal at all. Whether it makes it or our opinion of value breaks it, our assignment, our job is to develop an opinion of the market value of a property. And if you're in a situation where the home doesn't appraise for what you're willing to spend on that home, and you want to buy that home, it's your money. Go ahead. We're not telling you what to do with your money. But the problem is people get upset with us because if our opinion of market value is less than the contract price, either they have to come up with cash or they may not be able to buy the home. Appraisers are not in the business of making or breaking a deal. That's not our job. Our job is to develop an opinion of supportable market value, and then people can do what they want with that information. If you have any questions about a property and market value, feel free to pick up the phone and call an appraiser in your area. I know that there are many fantastic appraisers around the country that are more than willing to visit with you about market value. I typically open my podcast episode by saying that this show is designed to educate consumers about things related to real estate and real estate valuation. And that is true. Though I do know that I have some good friends who are appraisers out there that listen to this show and that support it. So first of all, if you're an appraiser and you're listening to my show, thank you so much for listening and thank you for your support. I truly appreciate it. I'd like to let you know about two really awesome appraisers that you may or may not have heard about, Scott Cullen and Tim Anderson. Now, Scott Cullen is the inventor of the Solomon Adjustment Calculator, and I've been using it for years. It really is an incredible tool, and I've tested it with other adjustment methods, and it's really an excellent tool, so I highly recommend you check that out. Tim Anderson is a USPAP instructor and friend of mine. He helps appraisers across the country to become better at what we do. And the two of them have teamed up and are teaching an online class or online classes on how to support specific adjustments. Now, I took two of those classes, one on making and supporting market adjustments and the other on supporting location adjustments. Now, I already had numerous ways that I would use to make these kinds of adjustments. But I took both of these classes. They were fantastic, and I picked up some cool new tools and methods for making these kinds of adjustments and supporting them. They're adding more classes right now. So whether you're a new appraiser or you've been appraising for decades like me, I think that you're really going to enjoy these classes. Scott and Tim are such knowledgeable appraisers, and they really do care about helping appraisers to develop supportable appraisals. Now, they're not a sponsor of this show, but I wanted to mention them because I think that you're truly going to benefit from their experience in these classes. So if you'd like to sign up, go to solomonappraisal.com and click on classes at the top of the page, and you can take their online classes. And now it's time for me to inflict some pain on your ears as I give you a couple of dad jokes. Of all the inventions of the last 100 years, the dry erase board has to be the most remarkable. To whoever stole my copy of Microsoft Office, I will find you. You have my word. And just one more insult to injury. Have you heard about the new corduroy pillows? They're making headlines. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Home Value Stories. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm so glad that you were able to, and I hope that you picked up something that you'll find valuable from this episode. If you have a topic that you'd like me to talk about in a future episode, please send me an email at homevaluestories@gmail.com, or you can message me on Twitter @storiesvalue. You can also subscribe to my podcast on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, radio.com, Radio Public, Breaker, and in a lot of other places where you listen to your podcast. In the meantime, if you're looking for a happy and upbeat appraiser in Northeast Ohio, you can find me on the web at aspenappraisalservices.net or the clevelandappraisalblog.com. And if you're not in Northeast Ohio, go to findmyappraiser.com. They have the best appraisers. I hope that you enjoy the warmer weather that's just ahead of us. Until we get together again, my best to you and your family.